Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me today. A pleasure to speak about FunkFeed and more specifically about insects and pet foods. My name is Lucy. I'm the COO and co-founder of FunkFeed. I'll get into more details at the end, or if you have questions. Basically, we are a pet food brand and we manufacture products for cats and dogs using insects as a source of protein. But today I really want to talk to you on a more general level about insects, how we breed insects, pet foods, and discuss with you as well if it's more sustainable, if it's good for your pets and for yourself maybe in the future. So I wanted to begin with a couple of questions. I'll start with my questions. Who here has a pet? Oh my God, I love it. So many customers. Who has a dog? Okay. What types of dogs, can I ask? Or?
Nice one.
Yeah, that's the one I like. Okay, and who has a cat? Okay, actually, fun facts. And another question, do they have disease? Are they healthy? What do you see in your dogs or your cats?
Yeah.
Good health?
It's expensive.
Yeah? Okay.
What was the question?
They get more love.
Are they healthy? Do you think they're healthy?
No matter what you do.
Okay, got it. Fair enough. My second question would be, if you have a cat or your dog, you know that they eat, but do you really know what they eat? Kind of, do you care?
Yes.
Yeah? So, who here knows, who buys the food for your cat or your dog at home? If it's yourself or your partner? Yeah? Okay. That's also interesting. And could you name me one or two ingredients that's in their food?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah? Can you tell me one?
Meat.
Okay. What kind of meats? Okay.
Beef, lamb, poultry,
Okay.
Wild meat.
wild
Okay.
meat. Yeah.
Okay. Got
Not
it.
too much celiac.
Not too much?
No.
Rice, I think.
Yeah? Most likely.
Good question.
Okay. Yeah, as well. Okay, interesting. And now questions about yourselves. Who here has ever eaten an insect?
Yeah,
All sorts.
okay.
By accident.
Amazing. You have a wild crowd.
Only under 4.
Yeah? Did you like it?
Yeah,
Yeah?
Some were good, some were bad.
What did you try?
I had scorpions, I had beetles, I had worms, I had grubs, I had
Yesterday.
a bunch of different things.
Okay.
For dinner.
Perfect.
Fry, bumblebees or bees.
You live in China, right?
Where was that?
Nine or
In China.
Okay. And who eats some in France, here? Does it happen ever that you eat an insect?
Escargot.
Yeah?
Insect.
That's not an insect, really.
something tall, isn't it?
It's slimy,
Yeah.
but it's not.
Like a aperitif.
Yeah.
Gastéropode.
Exactly. It's not the same
So
time.
a big bug.
Ish. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for playing along with me. I'll dig a bit deeper into all of these topics that we've discussed now. I'll start with just the pet food industry to give you kind of facts and figure, understand a bit better what are we talking about, because not...
Essentially France.
Yeah, I mean, I have a few facts from the global markets, just to see where we actually position ourselves. Then I'll talk a bit more about insects, what kind of insects you can breed, is it sustainable, and finally, insects as a food, basically. So can it be a good source of protein for your pet, your cat or your dog, or yourself, maybe? You see where I'm going. So yeah, in a nutshell, the pet food industry today is really, really huge markets. So some people value it around $110 billion for the global, $1 billion for the global industry. So just to understand that a lot of people have a pet. So if you count, estimates are varying depending the source, but there would be approximately 500 million dogs in the world and 300 million cats. And in France only, the trend is different. So people have more cats than dogs. You have approximately 14 million cats and 7.6 million dogs. And I'm only talking pets, not counting like all the wild animals that are around. And if you look at the industry, and I think specifically being in Lille, it's an interesting point because there's a lot of factories, production, industry in this region. In France only, there are 34 production sites that are only dedicated to pet food. So basically 34 factories across the country making kibbles, treats for your cat or your dog. And this represents approximately 1.8 million tons of products that are manufactured per year. So why am I boring you with all these numbers? Just because, you know, you have a pet, like your child comes home one day from, you know, school and they're like, I want a dog, I want a cat, and you will have to feed this animal at some point. And like you feed yourselves, you go to the supermarket and you buy like whatever products there are. If they have a disease, maybe you'll ask the vets. But really behind that and behind like all that pent frenziness, it's a huge industry with people really making money out of this. But few people know what's behind. So what's really in the pet food? So we've seen that it's a huge market. A lot of people have a pet. Everyone has to buy food for their pets. So there are mainly protein because a cat or a dog by nature like has a system where it's a carnivore. You have to eat protein, animal protein preferably. So usually you have like beef, salmon, chicken, whatever. That's kind of all the pictures you see on the pet food packaging. But the story behind like the pet food industry is that it was created a couple of decades ago, not only, I would say 50, 60 years ago, to manage like the waste from all the human manufacturing like food for you and I. So you would have like factories making meat for humans, and this industry generates waste. So a couple of smart people at some point were like, wait, these are still some sort of meat, maybe we can use it. And we decided to kind of dry all of these kind of bones, it's whatever, like the neck, the bone, the inside organs. We're about to eat, so I won't go into too much details. But all of these wastes that couldn't be consumed for humans legally has been dried and then like turned into a powder. So that's a protein powder that is used to make the kibble. So that's why when you open like the food for your dog, you expect to see, I don't know, chicken or beef, and then it's just a bowl of a kibble. So if you think about it this way, it could be a sustainable solution already. So one could argue that we created a whole industry chain to manage the waste from another industry and turn it into something that has value in the market and has value for people and for animals. That's a huge debate, and I'll get to that on the next slide. Before that, one really interesting point is that the market trends, so the pet food, as I mentioned, is an industry and is really subject to like the market trends and what people want, what they think they want. We talked about marketing last time, I think, when I was here. What industrial wants you to have as a need. So nowadays, people want fresh products, they want something organic, they want like quality, a lot of protein. That's why you see a lot of meat on the packaging. And that's also why people got interested in insects, such as myself. So why would you breed insects? So like we mentioned, nowadays we're managing the waste from human proteins to create pet foods. But if you open the newspaper or look at TV, you will see, and I don't think I'm teaching you anything, that the human population is growing. We're more and more on this planet. COVID really showed us that more and more people want to have pets. I think I saw like that a few days ago that last week was the second anniversary of like the COVID pets. So all the people who bought like a dog or a cat during COVID, all of these pets are 2 years old now. And more and more people behave as a pet parent, so they want to give quality food to their dog or their cat. If you just look at farmlands, these days 70% of the global farmlands are used for animal breeding. So once again, I'm boring you with numbers just to kind of bring you on the topic of we're going somewhere where food is going to be more rare. So we have to think of new solutions to feed ourselves and to feed dogs and cats. And I just want to come back to the question I asked before, like, is it sustainable already, pet food? Because you're managing waste. In a way, yes, but in the long run, we're going to go run out of products because more and more people eating meat and protein because we want more quality food. However, we're using more and more of these waste for humans, and that means less products available for pet food. So if we want to have animal protein for humans and for pets, we need to think of something else, basically. And then why would it be interesting to breed in insects? Is it more sustainable? Because there's a lot of greenwashing about this. And I would love for you to ask questions around this topic at the end, because it's really big debates about how do you breed in insects? Because to be honest, if you build a factory the way we used to build factories, and if you breed in insects the way you breed chicken nowadays, it's not really going to be more sustainable. You have to be smart about it. But there are proof that you require less space, because how it works is you have, I would say, like a square bucket. I don't really know how to, yeah, a tray. You need just to create a nice environment from them. You do not need to add water. So the beauty of insects is that they take their water out of their food. So if you give them, I don't know, a green pea or a mushroom, that's the only food they will require, no water needed. Such as with a cow or a chicken, it's a different story. And finally, there's a huge amount of things you can give them to eat. So what's beautiful about insects, I would say, is that you can pretty much give them anything. So waste from a restaurant, the foods, any sorts of vegetables, they will be able to consume this and transform it into a good source of protein. So obviously then if you want to have like a standardized product, which is what we do, for example, at FunkFeed, you do research on like what's the optimal food to get this optimal number of protein at the end. But essentially you can give them anything and they'll give you back protein. And I added some more figures just to show and kind of support the point of why is it more interesting. But yeah, the first line is the digestible body mass, which means if you take a cow or a chicken or an insect in front of you, you see its body. It's how much of this can you consume as a human being or as a pet, a dog or a cat, and transform into energy for your body to be fueled. With a beef, it's only 40%. So think about just kind of the meat and the muscles. The rest is a lot of bones, a structure of a cow that you cannot consume and transform into energy. With a pig, for example, it's 55%, same for a chicken. But with an insect such as, I think here the figure is for crickets, it's 80%. So already, if you think about this, we breed these insects to turn it into animal protein. With one individual, you can have more protein, you can have more food. And replicate this, and then you can scale quite largely. Then the feed conversion, it's basically how much they transform and how much waste they create. And same here, like the insect is much more efficient, turning the food you give it into energy and protein and the waste. Then the global warming potential, so kind of how much energy and CO2 they create while living. So an insect is a cold blood individual, so it doesn't really create CO2. Figures talk by themselves. And I think what's the most striking, especially with such a heat wave that we've had, we really feel the pressure on water, is that you only need 2 liters of water for a cricket to live versus a beef or a chicken. So yeah, pretty much the big picture. And if you look at the theory, this is really an interesting product to breed and a good source of animal protein. However, and this is where I always try to be kind of take a step back, it really depends on how you breed your products. If you build this huge factory where you waste the water everywhere, it's not going to make sense. But if you're smart about it, you can reinvent the food chain and create a good source of protein. And finally, I think this question is more kind of, do we want to eat that as the next source of protein? So for cats and dogs, which is the topic of today, and what I do, for example, every day at FunkFeed, something that's super interesting is that it's still very rare in pet food to find insects. So you have a couple of brands left and right, more people are doing it, but it's still very rare. So the immune system of a cat or a dog would be very less likely to recognize it as a threat and declare an allergy. So right now, without touching the protein and its structure, you can have a hypoallergenic product. So this is really, really efficient for a dog or a cat that has a digestion issue, an allergy, who's like scratching itself, coughing all the time. That's why I also ask, like, are your pets healthy? Because I know that's quite common. And a lot of the early adopters we had were people who came to their vets, were completely desperate. They're like, my cat can't eat anything, it's scratching itself, has a lot of issue with digestion. This is a great solution. So health-wise and for health professionals, this is a really good solution. The second point would be, it's also a good source of animal protein, because you have two types of protein, can come from like, you know, peas or lentils, so that's more of a vegetable protein. Animal proteins are important for carnivores because their body needs certain types of amino acids to function properly and be healthy on the long run. And we've actually run tests before selling products to cats and dogs. You have all the essential amino acids in an insect protein that you would find in a chicken or a beef. And finally, it's really tasty, so, and I've tried myself, and I'm not some sort of weirdo who has a bug in her basement. It's really tasty and it actually smells nice. So we are breeding mealworms, so basically small worms that you can use for fishing. And if you cook it, when you process it to make either kibbles or wet pet food, it smells like hazelnuts or toasted bread, depending on who you talk to. I'm sure some people around this room have already opened a can of like wet cat food, thrown in into the kitchen, and then you run away because it stinks. So it's also nice for you as pet parents, I would say. So yeah, I think in conclusion, super interesting source of alternative animal protein. I'm kind of thinking this needs to be added in like a diverse diet. I'm not like, for example, I'm not a vegetarian. I truly believe that like diversifying your sources of protein is a good way of going into the future. So I would say investing in this, you know, field, more research for insect breeding, and trying to open up to new sources of food would be a really good solution for cats, for dogs, but also for us in the long run. Yeah, that's what I wanted to share with you today. So